Every time I got a chance, my Bible tape's on in the car.
Well, sorry is not the kind of word that John Howard uses.
When you read the Bible in Luke, you will know that Luke is not from New Jersey. Anything like that right here.
Sorry, I keep saying I have not used the word conspiracy.
With respect to the issue of whether gays and lesbians should be able to get married.
You must understand the Federal Reserve is a cartel made up of the major banks.
It's a very interesting thing, losing one's religion. I think it's a revolution for one.
Actually, I don't even have a car right now. My car got stolen 4 weeks ago.
Hello, dear ninjas, and welcome to this, the 158th edition of the Imaginary Friends Show.com podcast, the one true podcast on science, skepticism, religion, politics, current affairs. That is the affairs of currants, you know, those small little dried, also raisin affairs, grape affairs, and the affairs of all stone fruit. In fact, the one true podcast that is like taking candy from a premature baby. Easy, but filled with guilt due to the immense pleasure that you feel as you bite into that delicious chocolate mixed with nougat and honey. Oh, it's just fantastic.
Where do you come up with this stuff?
Verbal diarrhea.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? I assume that I'm reading directly from our Heavenly Father. He's just right into my brain and it's coming straight up my mouth. I am your host for this fine piece of podcasting ass, Jake Farwarton, and joining us this week is everybody's favourite scientist, me. And everybody's second favourite scientist, Pete Darwin. Welcome, Pete. Welcome, Pete. How are you?
Hello. Good. Recovering. Yes. Good.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, Enough of you. And
Shut
also,
up and get back in your chair.
And also this week with us is Dr. Pedagogy, fan favourite on this show, and author of the awesome book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. Welcome, dear sir.
Thank you for having me. I love being on this show.
Oh, I love having you on this show.
Well, then that works out perfectly for both of us.
Absolutely, it is. It's like it's some sort of mutual thing that we have. I wasn't going to go where I was going to go. I
bromance. They call it a bromance.
Oh, get a room. Oh, that's fantastic. So now, before we start today's show, I just wanted to take a second to honour someone in my life who did something amazing last night. As many of you may have seen, I tweeted last night that my mother formally received her professorship, and it was also announced last night that she was made Dean of the School of Business for her university. So I just wanted to congratulate her publicly and say how profoundly proud I am of my mother, and just to, of course, make it known that I came from that. Yeah.
But you're going to say my mum's better than your mum.
Yeah, we'll go with that one too. That one works as well. So well done, mums. I'm so proud of you.
I came from that.
Congrats. That really is an enormous accomplishment. Seriously.
I totally agree. And now, listeners, it's time for a little segment that we call the mega awesome and completely factual wisdom of modern day Islamic leaders, which absolutely proves their scientific literacy and consistency with reality. This week's little gem of et ceteras comes from, oh wow, this is going to be a hard name to pronounce. Here we go. Hajat Salem Kazim Sedgdi, an Iranian Islamic scholar. He recently said, quote, "Many women who do not dress modestly lead young men astray, corrupt their young chastity, and spread adultery in the society, which increases earthquakes. So there you go, entire field of geology and seismology. Shove that in your science hole and smoke it."
Well, the first 90% of that was correct, but
They do totally corrupt men. It's, yeah.
I know, and we love it.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest corruptions known to man.
Does your atheism get you down? Does not having any imaginary friends to call on in your time of need leave you weeping in the corner of your bedroom? Does putting up your hand in your Religion 101 lecture for the 10th time that day get tiring? Here at the ImaginaryFriendsShow.com podcast, we understand that the God delusion can get boring after reading it for the 200th time. and that it's okay if you didn't quite finish that Daniel Dennett book. Listening to us can make you feel more normal than you ever could have dreamed. So head to www.imaginaryfriendshow.com and download an episode or 60. We'll guarantee that if you don't feel even the slightest sense of camaraderie with your hosts, you'll get your money back. Which is nothing, because we're as free as an Egyptian housewife. The ImaginaryFriendsShow.com podcast. We'll tell you where to get your morals from.
Before we talk to Peter about his mega awesome, incredible book, we need to sacrifice some stories to the gods of news and current affairs, that they might bestow upon us a bountiful harvest of newsworthy crap in the coming weeks. Firstly...
I've missed this.
You did. Firstly, yeah, Pete, you haven't been on in a couple of weeks, for goodness sake.
Oh, no, that's it.
Quit hiding. Quit hiding. You need to quit hiding. That's the thing. So, firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge the father of the American intellectual Ted Cruz, Rafael Cruz, who said this week, quote, "I'd like to send Barack Obama back to Kenya," which, if you were paying attention, is actually a haiku. Yeah, that's right. Not just an intellectual, but a poet. A Japanese poet, nonetheless. Now, next up, Frank Sherwin from the Institute of Creation Research. I really always wondered what they did at the Institute for Creation Research.
What could they researching?
Well, that's the thing, Peter, and I'm so glad that you asked that, because he is currently researching very important aspects from the science of creationism. You know, few sciences deserve an underline as much as the science of creationism. If you go to their website, science of creationism is underlined. I just thought I'd point that out because I thought, wow, I've never seen science of, say, seismology, science of biology underlined, but wow, they really like to underline their creation science. So he is currently researching the science of creationism, specifically including where parasitic behavior came from. Quote, "Parasitic behavior would not have existed in the world that God designed before Adam's sin, and therefore these behaviors must have developed from legitimate behaviors created by God." Now, what a shock he will get when he picks up a hematology textbook and finds out that the mitochondria of every cell, every one of his red blood cells, divides at a different rate and time to the nucleus of the cell, suggesting that it evolved as a separate organelle of bacterial origin, not to mention the fact that all complex life on this planet evolved from long-chain polypeptides that found their way into the nucleus of a lipid molecule, forming micelles, forming the most rudimentary cellular life, which then form the basis for all single-cellular and multicellular life on this planet. So snap.
There you go again.
Damn.
Yeah, so that, okay, so here is the, all kidding aside, here's the problem with that. Anybody who's rational and sincere and honest looks at what you just said, and of course they laugh because I was laughing, but the problem is that people who suffer from these pathologies, you know, these epistemological pathologies, these horrible ways of looking at the world, every single thing you just said was meaningless, right? So they would not, he would not have a shock at all if he looked at that, because he started with his belief first and he works backwards from that. So he'd say, well, it's a conspiracy, I'm offended by that, I'm hurt by that, or whatever he'd say, or it's not sufficient evidence to warrant belief, whatever he'd say. So, or, you know, the devil's putting out there to trick me. So any approach of providing the facts, and I didn't really understand anything you just said, but it sounded good to me. But any don't go there again. Any approach, any facts that you provide will not be sufficient to disabuse him of those beliefs, right? So, yeah, right. Because you, me, and everybody else who has reliable ways or reliable mechanisms to form beliefs, we look at that and we say, yeah, of course. So what's the problem? But he doesn't operate. That's why we need a manual for creating atheists. That's why we need a new way to break through from to people who suffer from these delusions. I mean, obviously he has very serious delusions. His delusions might even be pathogenomic. I mean, he has telltale, horrible delusions, and it's causing him to act and think in certain ways that his belief structure is completely out of alignment with reality.
You're totally right, though, as well. They are pathogenomic because this guy has a platform. He has the Institute for Creation Research, which, while it has a hilarious name, it is a platform there where people who are searching out creationism, who have, perhaps, a previously held Christian belief system and are now searching for, searching for information or research, loosely termed research, that might confirm their bias, they will go to this website and they will find people with PhD after their name, regardless of what that PhD pertains to. They will find people with PhD after their name, and they are effectively finding legitimacy. It is absolutely pathogenic.
Yeah, and so the question is, what do we do about that? How do we engage? And again, it depends what your goal is. And I've always said from the beginning that this is about helping people, and our goal should be to help people like this to move them through this trans-theoretical model, of this model of belief change, to help them align their beliefs with reality. Because right now, their beliefs are as far away from reality as one could possibly get. And we need to have a tool set. We need to help them to realign those beliefs with reality. These people are not well. They have some kind of an epistemological sickness. They have something has damaged them, and we need to help.
Yeah. Is it fair to refer to religion, especially in the worst cases, as a disease, as a psychological disease that needs, curing?
It fits the pattern. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
It fits the pattern.
Because a lot of people seem to have that knee-jerk reaction of, oh, nope, you did not just call it a disease. And you're like, well... But
that's the thing. It really fits the virus pattern. Like, the book that Dr. Darrell Ray wrote, The Faith Virus, really...
Great book.
Yeah,
Wonderful
it is.
Book.
It is a fundamental foundation. And it really discusses, it uses that analogy so very well to take that analogy really to the next level. And, it is a self-sustaining thing. It is something that once it comes into contact with something else, it goes inside of it. It changes the structure. It inserts its own DNA so that organism changes. That's exactly what a virus does. It is crazy. It is so similar.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and those are great books. They inform my thinking. Brody informed my thinking. Dawkins informed my thinking. So there's a long line of literature if people want to look into this, and it's in my book as well. I document that, the history of that literature. And so I mean, I think part of the problem is that this is an as yet unclassified kind of an illness, and we need to turn the same tools of science onto this. The problem is that there are these defensive mechanisms that are protecting the virus. And what's interesting to me is not even people who are infected by the virus, but other people who aren't infected by faith have issues about questioning or challenging someone's faith. And it's a very, very serious problem.
Yeah, they write it off as political correctness.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, but I didn't know if you wanted to go down that road. But it's almost, it really is. It's almost exclusively on the left. Yeah, and again, Dawkins and I talked about that in our interview. It's almost exclusively on the left. And Chapter 8 of my book, I really lay into academic liberalism, or what I call contemporary academic liberalism, as a grotesque betrayal of Enlightenment values. And they really have become, in a lot of ways, the unwitting allies of faith.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Now, you've completely hijacked this segment, and I have two other stories which are highly hilarious.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. I should let you finish there.
No, we're doing a podcast. I thought we were just having a conversation.
That's right. We must follow the format. The format defines us. In holy crap, there's a UFO. Quick, grab the worst camera we own news. Peru's Air Force is reopening an office responsible for investigating UFOs due to, quote, increased sightings of anomalous aerial phenomenon. There we go. Aerial phenomenon in the country's skies. The Department of Investigation of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena, which is DIFAA, first... Wow, that really doesn't work. Oh, it does. There you go. There we go. Hooray for Peru.
Shouldn't you be saying this in a Spanish accent? Come on.
I don't have a Spanish accent. Okay, I'll create one. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
First created in 2001 is being... I think that's Transylvanian.
That's Russian.
Yeah,
that's
there
Russian.
we go. Sorry, I have such a poor
So
range.
racist.
And the funny thing is, I'm Italian. I can't even create a Spanish freaking accent. There you go. He's being revived after lying dormant for 5 years because more UFO sightings have been reported to the media, said Colonel Julio Vuticech, head of the Air Force's Aerospace Interests Division. The unit will bring together sociologists, archaeologists, astronomers, meteorologists, and Air Force personnel to analyse these so-called events. Quote, many people don't report UFO sightings because they fear that they will be labelled mad or made fun of. But nowadays, with new technology, cell phone videos, Facebook, Twitter, they can be much more open without feeling that they are the ones who have seen what they've seen.
Because you get a throwaway account.
Yeah. Now, but this, funnily enough, reminds me of a quote from Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said, quote, did you ever notice that astronomers don't see UFOs? It's because they know what they're looking at. Finally, this one's hilarious. You're going to love this one. You ready?
Uh-oh.
Finally to the UK, where a rabbi-shaped dildo is causing a buzz. A rabbi-shaped dildo does not have the blessing of a major sex toy store. The device, called the, quote, rampant rabbi, was created by British comedian Shed Samove as part of his masterpieces line of novelty dildos. But United Kingdom erotic shop Ann Summers does not want the device to penetrate the market because its name is too similar to the store's rampant rabbit collection of vibrators. Samove advertises his toy as, quote, a religious experience and says, quote, the chosen dildo will generate cries of, oh God, oh God, oh God. Quote, his prayer cap gives the dildo a smooth, rounded top, and each piece is made from phthalate-free latex silicone. The, quote, limited edition product from his masterpieces line, which includes the Queen Elizabeth II model, which is the Buckingham phallus. And I'm going to have to bleep this next one out, but Dracula. My goodness. So welcome, Pete. It's fantastic to have an intellectual of your...
Yeah, actually glad you came on the show now.
So I wanted
I don't want to say anything.
Now, Pete, I'm so glad to have you on the show, and I wanted to firstly just read a quick little quote from the inside jacket of your book, which is describing the book A Manual for Creating Atheists. It says, quote, the fact is, this book is perfect. It's simple and, most importantly, accessible. The same techniques it outlines can be used in all walks of life, from social justice issues to boardroom negotiations. It does what no other atheist, skeptic book has done in the past. It gives you somewhere to go after you've read everything and said, well, that was fascinating. Where do I go to now? It works. It really does. Can you imagine who got to write this little blurb for your book? It was me, listeners.
It was a
me.
Genius blurb. It was genius. You know, it was great because it was so heartfelt. That's what made that blurb great. That's why we put it in the book.
Yeah, and it really is an amazing book. So, Peter, we've had you on before to talk about while you had the manuscript and while you were working on it. But now I'd love for you to elucidate on exactly where you took the book. What is it? Tell us about A Manual for Creating Atheists.
A Manual for Creating Atheists teaches readers how to talk people out of their faith and into reason. That's the one-sentence explanation.
Do they need to know what's happening?
The people with whom you're speaking, or who?
Is it better that they don't know that you're trying to convert them?
You're not trying to convert anybody. You're just trying to help them to learn to reason.
That's an important point, because a lot of, and sorry to interrupt you there, Peter,
I guess convert to skepticism. Sorry, I didn't mean.
A lot of the conversations that you will have will be incredibly gradual. The idea is, and it's said over and over again in Peter's book is that you're planting seeds. Basically, you're planting seeds. You're getting ready to cultivate an orchard. Basically, you go in there. You question a few of the concepts. Allow them to go away and think. And you'll run into them again, and they'll come up and they'll say, "Wow, thank you so much for setting me on the right path." But the idea is you're not there to take away their religion. You're not there to take away, because you won't do it. You won't do it in one go most of the time.
It's one of those things that has to happen from within and beyond there.
Yeah, and I want to be absolutely positively crystal clear. And I said this in my TAM talk. I have never tried to convert anybody ever.
Yep.
I just paved the way for people to convert themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
This cannot be something that's externally imposed upon people.
Yeah.
You can help.
It's religion.
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Yeah. Well, I think the important part is that you really can't. You can't convert anybody. It is impossible unless you're converting them to a new religion which very, very closely resembles the one that they're currently in. There is virtually no chance that you will convert somebody on the street. But the premise behind this is, the idea behind Peter's book is that we're basically he's creating street epistemologists, people who can go up to once you've read the formulas, once you've read the book, and you have an idea of how to structure your conversations. You take this and you go onto the street as an epistemologist. Epistemology refers to how we know what we know, right? So you're basically going onto the street, you're talking to people, and you're helping them to come to more sane conclusions about the beliefs that they hold. You're helping them to find out how they know what they know. You're helping them to ask these questions. And that's the seed. That's the seed that you plant. Because as soon as they apply it to the belief that they talk to you about, is that they'll take that home. They'll be laying there in the bath, wondering, thinking into the nothingness, thinking into their bubbles that they've blown through their farts, and they'll be wondering, what about this other belief?
That was a very important addition. So there are different levels. Some people may just want to read A Manual for Creating Atheists, and they may just want to help a loved one or a friend to liberate them of the faith virus. What I hope for is I'm really looking for about 10,000 people, and the way the book is selling, that's going to be we're going to have far more than that. I'm really looking for about 10,000 people who will actively go out and practice street epistemology, who will literally make it their thing. And then for everybody else, the book is just a tool set. It guides you through conversations. It guides you through a template for when you do have conversations with someone of faith. You don't have to worry about people saying to you, "Well, I'm just going to pray for you," right? Because those opportunities will turn from pester to opportunity. They will literally be opportunities. When someone rings my bell talking about Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses, I am stoked. That's like winning the lottery. And so the book will teach you. Either, again, you can take it to any level you want. Maybe you just have someone you see once a year, old friend from high school or what have you, one of your wife's brothers, and then you just want to help them liberate themselves of the faith virus. The book will teach you how to do that. It's accessible, it's straightforward. There are only 2 big words in the whole book, and it really is a roadmap.
What are the two big words, though? Is one of them epistemology?
Yep, one of them is epistemology, and you just said that's how you know what you know, basically. And the other one is doxastic. Don't let that scare anybody away, but it just means, the way that I use it in the book, it just means a belief system, a belief set. And you're trying to help people to be willing to change those beliefs, to be willing to revise their beliefs.
Yeah.
And so the word doxastic is, in the way I use it in the book, a way to think about this when you're speaking to people of faith.
That's pretty cool.
So I was meaning to ask you earlier on, sorry Jake, if you don't mind me cutting in, how do you feel, I guess this fight with the faith virus has gone today with the rise of technology and the internet and the amount of connectivity we have with one another, as well as access to information, whether it's valid or not, on the internet? Is that leaving one side better off than the other, or are we sort of just exactly where we were prior to it having arisen?
I mean, it's an excellent question. It's an empirical question for which I do not have data. However, there seems to, and this could be totally wrong, totally incorrect, but there seems to be the idea that the internet helps people by exposing them to alternative views when they research, for example, the silliness of Scientology or Mormonism. I don't know. My fear, to a certain extent, has been less the internet and more global connectivity. That this entrenches people. I think that it could, in part, fuel religious fundamentalism. It could fuel, because people then feel threatened. And that's why, for example, it's vital if the goal is for you to be a street clinician, to help people on the street, at the bank, or on planes, if your goal is to help disabuse them of bad ways of reasoning and adopt better ways of reasoning, the way to do that is not to shout at them, it's not to be angry with them, it's to take a dispassionate look and be very sincere in your engagements, and then you just walk through the template in the book. So the goal is not to humiliate anybody, and often when I read things online, there are trolls and flame wars, and there's a lot of, in my own opinion, based upon the research literature, although I haven't read much about online research literature, but that will further, to use the big word again, doxastic entrenchment. That will further that will further entrench those beliefs and that process of thinking about the world. But we don't want to. That's not the way to achieve the goal.
Yep. Well, it almost closes people down, doesn't it, when you get really offensive like that? I mean, there was a study that came out recently that said people criticizing overweight people is actually making the problem a lot worse and causing people to continue in those sorts of lifestyles as opposed to actually fixing the problem.
And you can apply that to really anything. Smokers. Anytime anytime you have a discussion with a smoker,
vitriolic.
Anytime you have a conversation like that with with somebody with an antisocial habit or something like that. If it's angry, if it's heated, if you throw facts at them, ultimately it'll go in one ear and out the other. I mean, you really won't have a great deal of effect. Two of the reasons why I really wanted to help promote your book, Peter, is it's twofold. Really, firstly, it makes everything so much easier. I don't want to oversell this, but it really does. It makes your everyday conversations with people in everyday life, regardless of whether you're having discussions on street epistemology about religion or discussions on an online forum about climate change or discussions in person at a natural therapy store over the use of homeopathy medication. You will have these discussions and they will be significantly easier because you have a structure because of this book. Because of this book.
Exactly, and it's an accessible structure that you don't need a PhD. I've done all the work for you. I've done all the research. I've gone to the prisons. I've done every single thing you need to do. The only thing you need to do, and this is the thing that I'm really thinking about, Jake and Pete. I'm thinking about helping people to move from reading the book to actually using the techniques. And among the things that I've been thinking about, I mean, I've thought about, possible taking pictures of people who've been liberated from the faith virus and, posting them online. I've thought about ideas that people can use, but it's key that it's not just about reading a fun read, and it's certainly not about debating with anybody, but it's about helping people, and it's about using the techniques that you see. So don't complain, don't piss and moan, don't shake your fist, act. Take actions, and next time you never really know when you're going to be someplace and then someone's going to start proselytizing or praying for you, and then the book will teach you how to deal with that.
So is that one of our biggest problems in the atheist community at the moment? Do you think the amount of self-righteousness and aggro sort of attitude that we have towards the religious, as well as the incessant, I guess, patting on our own backs sort of thing about, we
don't know where to go. That's what I see as the great issue. We don't know where to go. As I said earlier, the thing is, you read the great books and they get your mindset set. They really help you to get rid of those entrenched beliefs in yourself. But where do you go to from there? We don't know where to go. And that's that was the second reason why I love this book, why I really want to promote this book, is it gives you that thing. It gives you that next place to go.
Yeah, and it gives it's look. So this is real. People have to grok this. How important this is. We have the very, very dangerous forces colluding right now, and if we want to do. Look, we can do something about this, and as I said to you before, I think that the attitude that, it won't do any good, it's not going to help, I just think that that's false. I mean, it's empirically false, right? So, Jake, you were religious, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's empirically false, right? There are many, many examples of people who have cast off superstition and embraced reason. But it's not only false, it's that people... When you really think about it, it's amazing that there are literally tens of thousands of books and movies and pamphlets and videos about how to talk somebody into a superstition and a faith tradition, but there's no one's ever written one for how to talk people out of it. It's astonishing to me. But there it is. It's how to talk people out of faith and superstition, but to plug that hole with reason. And again, the idea is that we want to get enough this book, and that's why it's in paperback. It's $10. We want it $10, yeah. So we want to it's a translation, yeah. So we want to get the book in as many hands as possible, and then give it to a friend when you're finished with it. Yeah. Or put it in a local library, or put it in a hotel room instead of where the Bible is. Yeah. So
leave it on a train.
Leave it on a train. If we can get the book in as many hands as possible, then we can literally deliver hundreds of thousands of micro-inoculations every single day. I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm not saying that this is going to eradicate the faith virus. I certainly hope it is. I'm not saying that I have all the solutions. Chapter 9 of my book lists other things that we can do. It's entitled Containment Protocols. What protocols that we can take to contain the spread of the faith contagion. But even before that, we need to look at, like you said, Darrell Ray's book in that body of literature. We need to look at this as a virus, and then we need to contain it and eradicate it. We need to treat people who are affected by this virus with dignity, compassion, and care, and we need to very carefully walk them through this set of stages. And again, like you said, if you see them getting upset or angry, that may be part of the process that they come to abandon their faith and embrace reason.
Yeah, it often is. I must say though, Peter, I love that you thought that there was a cultural difference between bucks and dollars. I love the premise. You mean I have to go out and shoot 10 male deers in the head, and then send them to Amazon.com? That's not even an address. How the hell am I supposed to get 10 male deers to there? That's ridiculous. So, Peter, I'd love one of the sections that I love the most, or the discussions that I love the most, was the discussions about the prisoners that you've gone and interviewed. Can you talk to us about the discussions that you had with prisoners and why you had those discussions?
Sure. So the idea is that we don't think in terms of recidivism anymore. That is the number of people who go out and come back. We used to like that term because it's a very simple metric. It's quantifiable. It's a number. Oh, look, this number of people went out. This number of people came back. But we think of this now. We like to think of this now in terms of desistance. So how can we help inmates desist from criminal behavior? And one of the things that I did, actually, in my dissertation work, and I published a few things about this, is I've taken this strategy, looked at the literature for how to change the beliefs and the behaviors of people who don't want their beliefs and behaviors changed, and I put it in a teaching method, to use a fancy word, a pedagogy. I put it in a teaching method, and then I delivered this as an intervention. And the people in my study were exposed to an almost identical intervention as the intervention in the book. And I'm also working at a local hospital to help diabetics improve their treatment compliance in a diabetes clinic. So the idea is that we want to move people through these stages of change so that they'll be it'll help them in their journey to desistance. It sounds kind of corny, that idea, but it really is true. They're on a journey to desist from criminal behavior. And again, the way that you do that is basically the same techniques that are in the book.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great arguments at the moment is that the criminal justice system, once you actually get into a prison, it's very hard to get out of that system because we don't have that reform culture anymore. Well, I suppose we ever really did have that reform culture. So there's a huge body of research that is really looking at ways to help these people who were unfortunate enough to find their way inside of a prison cell. How do you get those people to, once they come out, not reoffend?
Which is a different problem in the US, isn't it? Because they want people to go in because they make money from the prison, so they almost find reasons to.
No, we don't. Believe me, we got enough criminals here. We don't need any more criminals. If you look at the stats for incarceration, they're shockingly high. So the idea is that, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. Cool. Not temperature cool.
Thank you so much for clarifying. He means that I need to turn up the temperature? I don't understand.
Initially, I was like, that's kind of a dad joke. And then I was like, wait a second, that was incredibly hilarious. Yeah. Throw back to the fuck joke.
So the idea is if you change people's cognitions, their behavior will fall. So how do you change people's cognitions? It's actually surprisingly simple to change people's cognitions. It's surprisingly simple.
And what sort of system are you applying to change their cognition?
Well, a combination of chapter 4 in the book is it draws from really it took me years and years and years and years to research this. It draws from a wide selection of literature across multiple domains of thought. And chapter 5 are specific techniques that tell you how to implement those. And chapter 5 is pretty much the Socratic method. And chapter 4 is literature that has absolutely nothing to do with the Socratic method that's been distilled down into a way that anybody can understand and apply who doesn't have a degree or has never been to college. You have to read obviously, which is interesting because when you work with prison inmates, you have to design these interventions for people who are at a 6th or 7th grade level. And often inmates don't read, so you can't use any reading materials.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, teaching in prisons is a whole new, I actually really like it. I find the discussions to be non-politically correct, unmediated by nonsense. I find them to be raw and honest, and nobody's worrying about a grade or you're just a guy who goes in there, and I'm a middle class guy, and I feel very comfortable in those environments.
With people from the left, with political correctness that is preventing the world from moving forward in its constructive criticism and its constructive dismantling of the faith virus?
God, we need 2 more hours for that. I mean, we would need. That is such an unbelievably profound problem. And actually, if you watch the talk with Dawkins in my talk, I asked him exactly that about, about the left. And it really is the left. The left, this is a complicated idea. It took me years and years of thinking and researching to figure this out. But so, and it was informed, by my personal observations. So there's classical liberalism, and the basic ideas of classical liberalism are, and you can see liberalism in not only a philosophical tradition, but a political tradition as well. What we see in academia today is it's not even a bastardization. It's that liberalism has been infected by these parasitic values that were unheard of, for example, to Locke. So the idea is that just as different people of different skin colors can coexist, so can different epistemic systems, so can different knowledge systems and cultural systems exist. And so just as we don't want to criticize people of a different race, so too should we not criticize people who have different ways to know the world or different epistemic systems. The problem with that is that there's a confusion between people and ideas. And I talked about this in my TAM talk, that criticisms of an idea are not criticisms of people. But yet the left, and it's complicated because we need to talk about multiculturalism and the role that multiculturalism plays, and speech codes that are on campus now. And the organization FIRE, F-I-R-E, has done some fantastic work. Greg is a good guy who does that. There's some pretty, and that's his book is in the deeper section of my book. There's some pretty horrific stories coming from college campuses now that detail the censorship placed upon ideas. If that weren't bad enough, those ideas are almost never related to Christianity and almost always related to Islam.
Yeah, well, we see that at the moment, with, effectively any time somebody stands up and says, what we see here is a terrible misappropriation of justice. In an Islamic system, you've got a marriage that can only be annulled by, for example, a local cabal. What do they call them? The Sharia courts or the Sharia courts. And you get, say, somebody to stand up and say, well, look, this is ridiculous, this is horrible, it's disenfranchising to the women, it forces them to wait and sit in horrible marriages where they're getting abused. And then you see somebody from the left stand up and say, look, guys, you can't criticize this. This is their culture. Come on.
Or worse, right? That's that you hear from just leftists who are misinformed or who have been indoctrinated by academic relativism. You also hear the more ugly, you're a racist.
I know, when did criticism become akin to that?
Yeah, when you really think about it, this took me a long time to digest this idea, but let this percolate. The left are the new racists. It's the people on the left that look at these social phenomena, these kind of facts of human experience, and then make racial inferences to these things. Yeah, and of course there's people on the right. In fact, just as you called, I was watching a video that Sam Harris tweeted, quitting the English Defense League, and I've read about the English Defense League recently. So yeah, you have people on the left, and you have people on the right, and they're fighting over things that are really rather unusual. And you also have this term of Islamophobia tossed around. And I don't know if you saw the video of the Muslim Peace Conference. Dawkins posted on his site. Sam Harris just wrote something about it. But if you have not seen that video, that is just, I'm not even going to describe it. I'm just going to say that is a video that you should see. You can link to it on your webpage. It is a must-see video.
Can you describe it a little bit? I mean, you're leaving me hanging here.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid if I describe it too much. But basically, and again, Sam Harris just wrote about it, and basically that I'm afraid I can't do. This is really one of those things. A lot of people say, "Oh, you should not require people to watch videos. They got to read books." That's actually not true. When you see this video, it's like the video when Dawkins dissects a giraffe. You can talk about intelligent design all you want. You can talk about dissecting a giraffe. But unless you actually see a giraffe dissected, you realize you can't really understand how it – maybe it's my part, it's a failure of imagination, but you can't really understand how that's a counter-argument against intelligent design. Similarly, when you see this video, unless you actually see this video where he focuses the camera on the audience and he says something like, look, we're not radical Muslims. We don't basically want to do horrible things to people. We just want to follow Allah's law. Who believes men and women should sit in different sections? Everybody raise their hands. Who believes that he talks about homosexuals and what the punishment should be? And then he talks about the fact that the media doesn't talk about this. He's Islamophobic. I mean, it's the most unbelievable inversion. And again, I would argue that that's totally the seeds of that. Not only the seeds, but the mechanism that keeps that in place is the left. I mean, these people really, they're just, I don't know if it's they think that they need to make up for excesses of colonialism, or they hate capitalism so much that I don't know what their problem is morally, but they have caused and continue to cause an absolute catastrophe in terms of teaching people to suspend their moral judgments about things and then feeling sanctimonious as a result.
Yeah.
It's incredulous. I'm incredulous. It's absolutely unfreaking believable.
It really is sanctimony, isn't it? Yeah. You're totally right. And I totally agree with you there. The use of the word Islamophobia is quite often just misused. Well, I would argue that it is probably a bad word to be using, just completely the wrong phrase.
Let's take some time and let's unpack this, okay? Because this is really important. Are there some people who hate Muslims? Absolutely. And these people are idiots, and they're bigots, and they're horrible people. Yes, there are some people who hate Muslims. No question about it. And these tend to be on the far right. And again, that's one of the reasons I was watching the English Defence League. And I just read a paper, I think it was University of Nottingham, about the English Defence League. Okay, so there is a difference, again, between the criticism of the tenets of a religion, whether it's Christianity, Mormonism, Scientology, what have you, and the criticism of people. And this is why it's complicated. There's the outside of academia where people use criticism of Islam and Muslims as a proxy for race. And yeah, there are absolutely people who do that. And again, they're horrible people. And then there's inside of academia, which again is chapter 8 in the book, because that's really that was my research area, and it's made that if you the culture that's been created is that, even think about that word, phobia, an irrational fear, Islamophobia. So it is a criticism of an epistemic system. A rational criticism of a process, of a way to know the world, is considered a phobia. So if I criticize a doctrine in Islam, or I criticize, and I'm not even talking about a cultural practice, but again, I think cultural practices, we should be totally, not only should we be free to criticize cultural practices, but we have to criticize cultural practices, or
it's
else
never going to get better.
Well, otherwise they get entrenched. Otherwise they get entrenched and they get excused by everyone. And then they just perpetuate, and then ultimately more people than are currently being, more people become oppressed. And, it's a terrible system. It needs to be dismantled.
And we need to have frank, honest discussions without name-calling, without terms like Islamophobia. But we also need to be very conscious and very aware of the fact that there are actually some people who hate Muslims. And we need to talk about the distinction, and that's where I think the faith virus is helpful. We need to make the distinction, we need to make it very, very clear the difference between criticizing a person and like particularly criticizing the immutable characteristics of a person and criticizing an idea. And that's just parenthetically, that's why I used to think it was PC nonsense to not say the word retarded, and I grew up saying it, and now I try not to use it. It slips out every once in a while. But the reason that I don't use it is because that's an immutable characteristic of a person.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that somebody can't change no matter what. But that's not the case with Islam or Christianity or Scientology or anything else. That's why the word apostasy exists for people who leave that faith tradition. So we really need to sit down and do some serious thinking. There are people who use unreliable ways to know the world. These people are hurting other people. This is a danger. It's not a game. This isn't something to play around with. And you can kvetch and piss and moan and be upset all you want, or you can take action. You can try to help people to liberate people of this dangerous way of thinking, and not only for themselves, for our communities. And I see this time and time again in the news, and it's incredibly disturbing to me. And what's making my professional life significantly worse are the constant attacks I receive by people on the left.
Well, the last thing you'd ever want to do is criticize something that people have believed in for thousands of years. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? It's clearly demonstrated. It's like, obviously it's true because, there's so many people who believe in it, obviously. But I mean, that's
very well said.
Well, that's one of the reasons ultimately why I love your book is it's for people who care passionately about humans. It leaves the religion aside and it basically says, look, you're speaking now to another human, right? Another human who has the same biology as yours, who has the same DNA makeup as yours, and basically who is the same as you. The main or the major difference, one of the greatest reasons why you may have a diametrical opposition to this person is because they think in a way that doesn't allow them to work. You've got something that is basically blocking their thoughts, that puts a bias in front of their thoughts that prevents them from getting along with you. And if you care passionately about this other human being and you care passionately about the truth, then you can do nothing more than allow them or help them to come to a greater conclusion by just helping them to find out exactly how it is that they have come to know what they believe is true.
Yeah, that was so well said. I'm almost speechless. No, that was absolutely correct. This is a type of humanitarian work, helping people, because these people the problem is they don't even realize that they're not well. They don't realize that they're right. They don't realize that they're trapped by these pathological beliefs.
They're surrounded by reinforcing behaviors.
Exactly. That's exactly
everyone's
right.
Sick then, yeah.
Yeah, so not only do they not realize it, but part of the problem is that they think they're better people because they have these beliefs. And part of the other problem is that they think that any kind of criticism about this, and this is when, again, to get back to your question, when the left comes in, the left doesn't want to allow any kind of criticism of this. And so these people become more, to use that word again, doxastically entrenched. They become more entrenched in the beliefs that they have.
And then we have opportunities. We have opportunities like your book. We have opportunities to correct that thinking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have opportunity. Not only do we have opportunities, I would argue that we have a duty.
Yeah.
But again, some people might not want to take it to that level. I mean, look. If somebody is doing something that you know is harmful or potentially harmful, like if somebody is driving drunk, don't you think you have an opportunity to say, "Hey, wait a second," hey, wait a minute. So we have
an obligation.
I mean, I would think so. Or look, some people aren't very outgoing or what have you. So you can help this. You can help humanity in any one of a number of ways. Yeah. So I mean, look, it is a problem, and there is something that we can do about this. And then the next thing is to actually do something about it.
Yeah. And your book really provides that for me. I was going to say that the funny thing is, there are plenty of people who aren't outgoing, who just don't perhaps, who are introverted, who don't perhaps like engaging with religious people, who don't perhaps like engaging with people who have, misinformed belief systems, like, climate change deniers and such, and are only really comfortable with engaging with these people online, and quite often those engagements are, "You're stupid! Shut up! Oh, I hate you! C word." That can quite often be the discussions that are had. So the cool thing about your book, again, I'm coming back to this. One of the greatest reasons why I am so passionate about pimping your book, if you will, is is the fact that it provides a framework. If you are somebody who is introverted, if you are somebody who has issues with talking to people in these types of formats, it's got the format for you. You don't need to recreate the wheel because you've bloody created it for us.
Yeah, and you also don't need to spend a decade of your life immersed in various domains of literature. You don't have to go into the prisons to talk to prisoners or diabetics. You don't have to have these conversations every day for 20 years. I've done it for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it's turned you insane. It's turned you into a brown jacket wearing individual.
The wheel.
It actually is kind of insane when you think about it. But I think. So real quick, I kind of my dad told me that you can take. He was a civil engineer, and he was telling me that you can take pollution out of streams and smokestacks. All you need to do for a stream to take a lot of pollution out is just need to dump bales of hay in the stream. I think it's called like tertiary filtering or something. And it's so cheap and it's so easy to do. But as you go towards, or as you increase the amount of pollution that you want to take out of the stream, it becomes cost prohibitive. And it becomes more expensive. You need techniques, et cetera, et cetera. But the principle that was fascinating to me about that really almost set my life off on the course that it did, was that for a very small amount of money and a very small investment, you can really take out a significant amount of pollution out of the stream. So think about it like this, if I may. So you're lifting weights, you're doing squats. I know Pete Darwin is a big weightlifting fan. You're doing weights from 9 to 10 is not as difficult as from 9 to 10 is more difficult than 1 to 9. So there's something about that principle of, the first one you do is easy, and then it becomes more difficult. And so the principle there's that if we can just, with very little work, with very minimal work, we can talk people out of the worst possible way of thinking. And the worst possible way of thinking is faith. As a minimum, as an absolute minimum, we can leave them with mediocre ways to think.
Yeah.
If we only did that, if we only did that and just disabuse people of faith, and we didn't even help them to think more rationally, we just helped them to stop thinking less rationally. If we only did that, we would make a very significant dent to the problems facing our communities, would make a very significant dent in the cognitive and emotional lives of those people. It would be a major, major, major step forward for us as a species.
Yeah, so true. And again, it really is applicable in every part of your life. You pick up these books every now and then, and it is for one particular subject, and it completely changes your life. You can use this book when discussing climate change on the internet. You can use this book when you're in a vitamin store and somebody tries to sell you homeopathy. You can use this book when you want to debate religion in the Queen Street Mall in Brisbane every Saturday night from 7 till 9 p.m. You can use this book in the boardroom when you're having high-level negotiations to talk people out of their irrational beliefs. This book is applicable everywhere. This formula is applicable everywhere. And the best thing about it is it's all written there for you. The formula is there. You know, if you are the introvert, if you are that person who has trouble making those or having those discussions, the formula is there. You just need to read it and then apply it. It's a piece of cake.
Yeah, it really is true. And ideally what I would want is that people would read the book and then not only talk other people out of reasoning, but they'd develop better questions, they'd develop a better mechanism for answering questions, and then they'd begin slowly imposing the method on themselves. So they'd clean up their own thinking. They'd help take they'd help to stop believing things that are false, even small things, and tremendously advance their own epistemic situation. But again, like filtering pollution out of a stream, it takes considerably more time to bump your reasoning up to the level of excellent, right, or genius level. It takes a lot of time. But if you do this, one byproduct of constantly not even constantly, of just engaging in these interventions, one byproduct of that is that you yourself will develop the tools of critical rationality. So you won't just be emancipating people from a horrible way of thinking about the world that's destroying their lives and their societies and their communities, but you should actually do this for your own self-interest.
Now, as it turns out, listeners, Peter Boghossian is just too amazing to condense into one single episode of the Imaginary Friend Show.com podcast. And as a consequence, we have had to split this awesome interview into 2 parts. The first of which will finish in about 35 seconds. The second of which will be released this Wednesday. So if you can contain your anticipation, then I suggest that you hang out until Wednesday. If you can't, then I strongly suggest that you go to your nearest glacier, dig at least 100 feet down, bury yourself there, and then we will see you in 10 years' time when all of the glaciers have melted and you will have access to, of course, the previous 10 years of podcasting, which would include the second episode of the interview with Peter Boghossian. So, dear listeners, until we next speak, Godspeed, which will be Wednesday. Farewell.